Right, okay, so let's get back to our... Oh, did I just swap the microphone? Maybe, maybe not. Let's get back to our AES development. And so we've done a version of the frequency boost, we've done the delay, and now we need to look at the time stretch and time freeze parameters. I mean, looking at the way that I said in the last video, I'd done a little bit of extra research on the FFT stuff, and sort of there's a previous video, hopefully above, explaining what that is. But with a time stretch, what you're doing is you're destructively sort of stretching or shortening a clip so that it's either longer or shorter than it started out being. And I use the word destructively because it probably means that whereas all of these have been straight off the main audio track, we're going to have some sort of trigger that captures audio into a buffer. So let's have a quick look. So in Paint, we are going to have our audio coming in, and then we've had our other effects. But what we're going to need to happen for our time stretch is we're going to need a buffer, because we need the waveform, that we can then shorten or stretch depending on what we want to occur. And you can't do that with live audio because we don't have it recorded. So you can't shorten something that's either happened or is yet to happen. So what we'll do is we will record a buffer of X seconds, and then we will store that separately to be called upon. And then we'll need to add something that allows us to bring the main audio track back in afterwards. Maybe even mixing them as well. The idea being that we can have our main audio coming in with our time stretch underneath, where we can be making sounds or have something coming from it. Let's not save that masterpiece. So let's do P time stretch, and doing all the extra work on the FFT stuff is probably going to be our go-to for actually how we're going to stretch or store and stretch this audio, but I have no idea is the general answer. This is going to be a full raw video of us working out what we're doing. So the first thing we're going to need is a buffer. And we need to record into a buffer, so we are going to want a record tilde. So we have our input, start and stop the recording into the name, that goes into a buffer. So let's call this time stretch. Let's make this buffer time stretch. And we just start and stop. So then we do trigger, audio in, and then let's plug that in there. So let's do a quick test. So let me arrange that, bring our recording up here, push play. I'm going to pause that, and I'm going to put the open message into our buffer. There is nothing there. I'm missing something. I'm always missing something simple. Start point, end point, 0, 0. Cut to another value, reset the entire buffer length. That's not what we want. They should have put audio into the buffer. I'm just guessing maybe it's not properly receiving the audio. What is the name of the thing I'm looking for? Number, that's it. Are we getting any signal in? Right, okay, so we can definitely guarantee we're getting signal in. You can record up to 4 channels by specifying optional argument. Recording stops when the buffer is filled. Is it because I have not specified the size of a buffer? Again, it should load automatically. Stretch. Testing 1, 2, 3. Right, so that has worked correctly. What has not here? Just, it doesn't seem to be getting a signal in properly. And I cannot explain why. Buffer is sitting there. Maybe it's because I've not defined a time, but I'm not sure why that would be. Alright, okay, so it was just not defining a time into the buffer. So what do we want to do? So let's say we want to record 5 seconds that we can time stretch. So I'm going to set the time there. I am then going to get rid of them. So then we want to something that triggers the recording. So I'm going to have to leave this playing, unfortunately. And then it should record for 5 seconds. And then stop. We can turn that off. So now we have a buffer that is 5 seconds long, containing the audio that we would say we want to time stretch. We could play that back by... What is the easiest way to play a sample back? SF play. I think it is if we do SF play and then time stretch. We can play a buffer like this. Key bars, time stretch. Oh, there's a time stretch option apparently. Like I did prior to Max 7. Scale, pitch, and time independently. Pitch can be specified as a pitch ratio or an offset in cents. Best option for real-time performance. Basic. Okay, we'll need to give this a shot. This isn't the way I thought I was going to do it, but let's see if I can make it play first. So maybe, is it something as simple as play? Oh, it is play. Jesus. It's one of those days. It is one of those days. So let's play the game of why it works for you but not for me. Oh, do you know it's going to be something super simple like that? Yep, there we go. Right, so now we have a buffer of 5 seconds that's recorded whenever we push a button. It just needs to be a bang, so I think if we do, yeah, this needs to be, so I'm going to stop that and start this. I have a 5-second recording of something happening. What else do we want to have? We need it that when this is started, it resets the current buffer. So that's something we need to look at as well, is that there's really obvious clipping happening on something in here. I'm not quite sure where it's coming from, so we'll need to go in and have a look. My first guess is going to be that it's something to do inside the delay, where we have this happening that I thought wouldn't be a problem, but I think it is. I think we need to use a matrix instead. So I'm going to place that there to remind me. Right, so what's happening here? So I have my controller. Oh. Must be a way for me to automatically switch off the recording, is there? Start point, end point. Right, okay, so instead of a play, we're probably going to use a groove because that'll allow us to set up a really basic time stretch. So let's reopen that help time stretch. Let's just do, no, wrong one. Prepend time stretch. Oh, I've just realized that this is consistently stuck in a loop with itself. Prepend time stretch. And now if we do a message out, this controls the time stretch on or off for us. Let's just verify that works. Brilliant. And then we want to pass it a float. Slider that goes from 0 to 1. That goes into a sig. And that goes into there. So now if we do a loop, actually if we record something, so now the noise we hear is coming out of groove. What is the actual number coming out of it though? Oh, I just closed it. So the main problem is, I just want to verify. It seems to have cleared itself. That's not very useful. Right, I think what the way this is going to work from the user is they push it, or they hold a button, and while that button is on, then it's recording, and when it's off, it stops recording. So how would I do that? Record the entire buffer length. So maybe reset is the button we want to do. there's definitely something I'm missing. Reset, record the entire buffer length. Stop recording. So I think that's what it's going to be, is that, so basically there will be a button that while it is held, can you do that with a bang? Let me just double check. Yeah, so what I need to be happening here is every time this button is held, so while something is on, so can you do a while loop? Right, okay, that's obviously not a solution. It's probably really simple. So I want it so that when a button, so they enable a toggle, maybe it's going to go into a gate, G switch. Why is this so hard? Because I want to make buffer an arbitrary length, and I want it so that when the user pushes the button on the screen or on, say, an iPhone touch interface, it starts to record the buffer. As soon as I let it go, that's it's the end. How would you do it? I think it is just going to be a toggle. I'll need to double check with the OSCN stuff, but it probably is going to be the easiest way here. So that should. Yeah, that is how it's going to be. So I want every time that is turned on, no, that won't work because that's going to clear the entire thing. I want to just clear the length of the buffer. Read audio and resize, right. What do we want to do? We want to... Right, okay, let's stop that before we all go insane. Buffer takes size samples, apply clear low, just clear. So we do that. So we have a look, and that should be it ended. We then want to get the length of the buffer and resize it dynamically. See, this is the harder part. Size, set size in milliseconds. Can I get the size in milliseconds? Yes, I can if we get info off it. Info. Time stretch. Release loop. Start. Total time seconds. But that is not the case because that's only, so we need to start something that says timer, reports in the last time between two events. So if I equals 1, then 1 else out 2 1. So what this will do is whenever it receives 1 on the inset, it'll start, and then it'll stop. So someone starts recording, someone stops recording, int. Oh, I don't want, I want these to be bang, bang. Start, stop. Then we have an exact time in milliseconds coming out of this. So we want to prepend size. So the size of our buffer should now be exactly the same length as our recording. Okay, so this is getting a bit more confusing, but you can see what's happening. Every time that the user starts it, we want to reset it to something arbitrary like a 10-second buffer. So when 1, we bang that. Right, okay. So now when let's start recording, start, and then stop. So we've not got any messages. Our buffer is that long, but it doesn't have any data. So I presume setting the size clears the buffer. So instead of changing the size, what we want to do is set our loop in, loop out points on groove so that we stay in loop. There should be a way that we can set the loop in and loop out point here. Set loop, set the start and end loop points, followed by two numbers, the start and end of the loop. So what we need to do, instead of prepending size, because our buffer will always be 10 seconds, it's just a good amount of data. Prepend size, we want to set loop 0. Have a look at the message that comes out of it. So that should be that. That goes into groove channels start loop. It was set loop. The word set loop followed by two numbers sets the start and end points. So that's what it's expecting in the start. This could be interesting. So if we do right, okay, sorry, we just paused everything there by mistake. Right, okay, so we've got our sound. We want to close that inspector and lengthen this one out a bit. Let's close that max window. So let's start recording. I'm not happy with that. I'm going to stop recording. I'm going to stop playing. And then I'm going to start. I'm pretty sure this needs a 1 to start, is it? So now, even though our buffer is sort of about 7 seconds long, this should loop perfectly. Loop sync output. Not really sure what's coming out of the second channel between 1 and 0, 0 and 1. Okay, so what this should do is whenever this is 1, it should signify that it's at the end of the clip and that it's starting again. Let's see if we do, so let's stop that. Let's do the talking instead.
对不起，我能跟你说几句话吗？对不起，我能跟你说几句话吗？对不起，我能跟你说几句话吗？对不起，我能跟你说几句话吗？对不起，我能跟你说。我能跟你说几句话吗？对不起，我能跟你说几句，我能跟你说几句话吗？对不起，我能跟你说几句，我能跟你说几句话吗？对不起，我能跟你说几句，我能跟你说几句话。我能跟你说几句，我能跟你说几句话吗？对不起，我能跟你说几句，我能跟你说几句话吗？对不起，我能跟你说几句，我能跟你说几句话吗？对不起，我能跟你说几句，我能跟你说几句话吗？对不起，我能跟你说。 几句话吗？对不起，我能跟你说几句，我能跟你说几句话吗？对不起，我能跟你说几句，我能跟你说几句话吗？对不起，我能跟你说几句，我能跟你说几句话吗？对不起，我能跟你说几句，我能跟你说几句话吗？对不起，我能跟你说几句，我能跟你说几句话吗？对不起，我能跟你说几句，我能跟你说。
Right, okay, so and I'm just going to do set 1. And then I am going to do a test. I'm going to need actual voice for this. So that should be my voice coming in here. Plug that in there. And then we are going to do, let's see where the audio input is coming from. That's probably fine. Let's turn me up a bit. And then do testing 1, 2, 3. Let's hear what we get back.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3.
This is probably a much better example where I should have started for doing the loop. So you can see that it instantly stops at the end of when I stopped recording. So even though our buffer is 10 seconds, we're only using the amount that we actually recorded by clipping groove smartly. Now we should be able to stretch it using this slider here. Do we want to get faster than that? Probably. See where this is going. Just gonna have to do it. And I think if I saw it on Groove properly, it talked about using a pitch shift synth as well, because they were now separated. The pitch shift doesn't seem to be doing anything.
Testing 1, 2, 3. 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 Testing 1, 2.
Did it do something in the actual example we had here? Hello. Hello. This is another test. Hello. This is another test. See, something has gone awry here. Hello. This is another test. 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 Another test. Hello.
This is another test. Hello. This is another test.
I feel like something has been enabled that I'm missing.
This is another test. Hello. This is
And that's why the pitch isn't making an effect here for me.
This is another test.
Print speed cues,
Another test. Hello.
pitch shift factor, pitch shift in sense,
This is another test.
doubling pitch, 0.5, half the original pitch, pitch shift.
Hello. This is another test. 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 Hello. Hello. This is another test.
Could be something to do with the way I'm accessing Groove as well.
Hello. This is another test. 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 This is another test.
Okay, I realised what's happened. It's just I'd affected Groove and I hadn't reset the time stretch parameter, which separates pitch. This is another test. Hello. This. Sounds really good. Hello, this is another test. Hello, this is another test. This is another test. So at the moment, my brain is really falling apart here. If that goes between 0 and 2, what we want to do is scale it between. This is another test. Hello, so this is another 0 and 1 this is another test. Goes between negative 1 and 1. Hello, this is another test. 0 and 1 goes to negative 1 and 1. Hello, this is another test. Hello, this is another test. That means that hello, this is another test. 1 is still 1. Hello, this is another test. 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 Hello, but we want it to go higher as well, so it goes from negative 1 to 2. Hello, this is another test. Hello, this is another test. Negative 1 to 2. And we want to push it up. This is another test. Hello, 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 I think we just have a reset button. Hello, this is another test. Hello, this is another test. Hello, this is another test. Hello, this. So we can control the speed, that's fine. Hello, this is another test. 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 Okay, I'm going to stop this for a second and take a quick break. Okay, part 2 of the time stretch. So we're almost there. It's just working out how to properly apply the scale on these faders, or these sliders I should say. So we have, what do we have at the moment? Let's record that. This is an audio recording. 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 Audio recording. This is an audio recording. This is an audio recording. This is an audio recording. might actually change this one. So yeah, I think I'm going to change these so that they are numbers rather than.
Audio recording. This is an audio.
And I think I want to make some sort of ramp. So
This is an audio.
we want it to be kind of exponential. So if we have our graph, whereas this is 0 and this is n to infinity, we want it so that it really slowly increases and then gets faster and faster and faster and faster. Wow. And it's just so that we can get really close on the 0 to 1 scale, but then anything from 1 upwards up to 100, it goes really, really quickly. Because you're never going to want anything more than, say, 0 and 2, or 0 and 2 for controlling your speed, to hear it. Otherwise, you just want to turn it into a beat or a pop or something else. So, how do we do that? Might need to refer to our good friend the internet here. I also need to work out the start-stop thing as well, so that when it's finished, there's some way to cue it. So there's a couple of buttons we need to externally sync here to get this effect working properly. But we are almost there. We've got all the elements in place. We just need to pretty them up a little bit, basically. We also need a reset trigger, so we want a send reset or reset, and what is involved in a reset. So things we want to reset are this. Our buffer's empty. Testing another audio recording. Testing an audio recording.
Testing an audio recording. Testing an audio recording. Testing an audio. Test.
I think we don't actually need that at all. This should work.
Testing.
1, 2, 3 testing.
1, 2, 3 testing. 1, 2, 3 testing.
So then we have I think that might be all we need to reset for at the moment. We don't need the line, we don't need that. Is that what we want? So let's play it.
1, 2, 3 testing. 1, 2, 3 testing.
Testing.
1, 2, 3 testing. 1, 2, 3 testing.
1, 2, 3 testing.
1, 2, 3 testing. 1, 2, 3 testing. 1, 2, 3 testing.
I really like some of the effects you can get with pitch shifting on that. That's the thing
1,
for
2, 3
another
testing.
date, but
1, 2,
something
3
we can
testing.
potentially explore when I send it back
1,
over.
2, 3 testing.
Right, okay, so I'm going to stop that there. That's the other thing we need is we'll have a stop button coming in. So inlets, I'm going to write this down because we do have a lot more happening in this one. So we have audio, reset, or quickly set values to default. So this is just, say something had gone wrong with the effect you'd made, we can quickly reset it to 0, or to 1 in this case. I imagine this will be replaced by swapping to a preset. Reset. What else do we need? Start. Stop. So we want the ability to start and stop. So I think what we'll have is something like a trigger. And then we will have an equation that is expression 1 minus, and then the value and that should give us either 0 or 1. No, that's not what we want. That just does the exact same as a trigger. Why have I done that? What do we want? We want a root. 0, 1. When it matches 0, we want to stop it. When it matches 1, we want to start it. Start, stop. Reset to default. So we have all these things sort of coming together already. We also want record sample. So that's what this part is up here. Just going to make all the parts that we need slightly bigger. Record sample. That's our audio. And then it's how do we enable the pass through so it still works? For example, when we push record, should it stop passing through the audio and then start it again once it's finished? Maybe that is a good idea. So when this is held, it stops routing the main audio out, otherwise it just sends it as normal. Wow, that was really noisy. K3. Yeah, so we probably want this. 2. And let's attach this to a spec. So it's on. Oh, I need to actually send audio through it. Okay, so that works there. Either it doesn't root it or it does root it. And then we want to take away 1 from our... Do we want to take away 1? We want to basically invert what's coming out. Let me just go and pause that again. Yeah, so we want to invert this value, so we're going to times by -1. Plug that in there. Have a look at the message. -1, 0. That's not right. There is probably a super simple way to invert this. Why can't I think of it? I'm just going to do it the way I know how, programmatically. If it's equal to 1, then 0, else 1. So now if I disable this, what should happen is I push record, it will record a sample, and then it will start playing that back underneath the audio. So for example, what I could do is, so I've got nothing set up, so I'm going to clear my buffer, get this to a stage where it is so it's kind of like a beat we've got going there. And then, yeah, so let's add a inlet for this. So that is going to be the start stop. And then what else do we want? We have reset coming in. Reset, and then the final thing we have is we need the actual record button. Okay, so it's starting to get somewhere. There's little things in there like we need to add audio controls and those sort of things. But let's go back to the point at hand before I got sidetracked, and that's turning this signal so that it goes 0 to 2 very slowly, and then after 2 it absolutely skyrockets. How would we do that? Ramp smooth, smooth an incoming signal. generator. What exponential? Let's have a look. Maximus P exponential curve. The number, I would just use a line going from one number to the next over a chosen time and feed it into an expression containing a formula. Okay, so that's not quite what we are looking for. Maybe the curve is what we're looking for. Exponential ramp generator. That does sound like exactly what we're looking for. Use the curve object to produce a signal that goes from an initial to a target value over a specified time. It's similar to the line object. It produces a nonlinear ramp using piecewise approximation of exponential functions. Is there a normal curve object? Scale numbers exponentially. Drag slide. Here we go. That's what we're looking for. So scales number from one range to another with an exponential curve. Both the input and output ranges are expressed as single arguments representing the maximum value. The minimum values are negative values of the ranges. Argument times -1. Slew time, input output curve delay. From one range to another, so this is going from 0 to 127. Line drive, right, okay, let's have a look at this. Line drive. Input number required, so let's say 10. Output, we want it to go up to 100. Curve, 1.06 was the other one. Delay 30 looked like the number the other one had. So if we input a number, what do we get out? Okay, this looks better. 127 to 10. Over a floating range. Let me plug that into our signal instead.
对不起，我能跟你说，
Beautiful, that's exactly what we're looking for. So we need to change, we need to sort of find a solid for that number later. I kind of like this. This effect is really cool. So there's lots of little things like inside these inside these effects, they're still controlled by the sliders inside of them. So when you set them outside, it gets a bit fiddly. But we will address that sort of in a future update. But I think for now, the last thing we need to plug in is this. Not there. And we are ready to go with the time stretch. So we have, what do we have here? We have stretch amount 0% up to 100%. And then we also have, we need to introduce one for change. This might be slightly an overcomplication, so we may end up going back and removing the pitch change. Record sample. Start sample. Reset default vowels. So we're slowly getting there. Now we have the time stretcher put in. Let's date it. We can start going on and looking at how to freeze it. Freeze is a bit more complicated. I thought I was going to have to use FFT for this, but we definitely will for... maybe we won't. Never say never, but I expect to use it next time for the time freeze controller, and especially being able to layer up properly. Things have started to get a bit crazy, so I might go back and tidy this up a little bit, but you get the general idea of what we've done and what is required to make a time stretcher in Max.